All right, welcome back to the Reality Show Life Coach podcast. Today, we're going to talk about season 45, episode 13, the finale of Survivor. This season flew by so fast. I can't believe it's over. I have loved this season. I love season 44, and now I really love season 45. This new era of Survivor has been so fun and so challenging. And, it just keeps on throwing in twists and turns and all that good stuff. Um, I'm going to jump right into it. You might notice I'm flying solo again. It's been really funny to like plan out these seasons because you never quite know how many episodes that there are going to be, and there were two more than I thought there would be this season. So flying solo, and this is also fun because this is the last thing I need to do before I'm on holiday end of year break. So I feel like kind of like a little kid, like get it done, go on break. So if this is the last thing I do before break, this is amazing, right? Because this is so fun for me to do this podcast. If we haven't met before, my name is Lynn. I am a certified life coach. And yep, this is my podcast. I talk about reality shows and I break it down from a life coaching perspective. Anyway, finale, Survivor. This was a long one. This was, if you watched it live, it was 3 hours long. On the the replay, it was two plus hours long, and a lot happened in this episode. We start out with a reminder that Jake has found an idol. Um, Jake plays this in a very Jake way. He's like, I'm gonna keep this secret, and proceeds to tell everybody that he has an idol, which then in turn kind of messes with everyone's gameplay because first he tells Austin tells Dee tells Julie tells, Katura like finds out. I think Jake tells her. So everybody knows. Before they had learned that Jake had an idol, everybody was kind of maybe sort of thinking about voting on him. And obviously that threw a wrench in things. Um, we go to the immunity challenge. Austin wins, so he's out. And then obviously Jake is out. So that just leaves Dee, Katura, and Julie for everyone to pick from. And this was a really interesting tribal council because there was no continuity here. I don't know what the conversations were like in total right before they went to the tribal council, but there was like basically a vote on everybody except for Austin, and Julie ended up with two votes on her. It was supposed to be Dee going home. Jake and Katura were supposed to vote for Dee, and at the last minute, Katura changed her vote to Julie, so Julie went home. So Julie goes home. We proceed with the episode. We have the second immunity challenge, and this is the one for all the wins. This is the one that, to decide who is actually going to go to the final tribal council and pick who sits beside them. And Dee wins this one. You kind of could have predicted this one. It was one of those challenges that required a steady hand, and Dee, out of everyone, has kind of the steadiest, calmest personality. Austin right behind her, but I mean, hands down, she won this one. It was kind of incredible to watch. It's one of those that I hate watching because there's so much going on. They have to be so steady and so slow and so measured, and they're trying to balance all of these little cups on this tiny platform that even just like a good gust of wind could blow off. So it's one of those that really requires you to focus and keep your emotions in check. If you get too jumpy with it, if you get too eager with it, I mean, you could just hit your leg against something and topple everything, which is what we see with Jake. Jake is neck and neck with Dee. He's seeing like his way forward and he topples it all. And Jake gets mad. He does something that you rarely see on Survivor, where he just basically throws the challenge. He starts just stomping all over everything. Uh, Jeff is telling Jake, like, hey, if you break this, you're out, buddy. And Jake breaks the challenge and he doesn't have a choice. Like, and the matter, he can't like go and fix it or anything. He's just broken it. And so you just kind of see him sulking off into the background. Um, so Dee wins this one. And, you know, it's usually a pretty tough call who to bring to the end, and they kind of sit and toil about it forever. But it was pretty clear for Dee she was going to take Austin. She really didn't want him to make fire. because he probably would have succeeded and had like another win under his belt. And Jake really, really wanted to make fire. You see him pleading with her, please, 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 please let me do this. And Dee is like, yeah, totally, you're in. Jake goes against Katura. Jake ultimately wins fire. You see a lot of emotions from him there. Katura, strong belief in herself, but just ultimately the skills just aren't there to meet up with it. We have this amazing final tribal council. All the jury shows up, asks really great questions, and ultimately Dee is crowned the last final remaining survivor. She wins the $1 million with Austin right behind her. She gets 5 votes, he gets 3. So it's even just one of those final challenges, where or final immunity. What am I trying to say here? Final tribals where you're not quite sure where it's going to go. Uh, I thought for a second there Austin might win, but Dee seemed like a very clear winner. I mean, in the last several episodes, she's just been so clearly solid, so in check with herself. And, I think she's worthy of the win. I think she's been amazing player throughout. And it's just unfortunate that Austin was on a season where you have somebody like Dee, who was just very solid, very emotional, but kept her emotions in check. Amazing in challenges, amazing social game. So amazing. And congrats to Dee. So, okay. So let's break this episode down. I'm going to take a big old drink of water. All right. I can totally feel my like senioritis setting in. I was like, what am I talking about? I want to be done. Let's go on Christmas break. Oh boy. Oh boy. I'm sure you can relate. Okay. So I think a lot of this episode was interesting because a lot of Jake was featured in this. We see like such a range of emotions from Jake on this episode. Um, I think it really started out with him kind of being at this breaking point. And it's such a relatable thing, but you just don't see it on Survivor as much because the stakes are so high. Like if you don't keep your emotions in check, you might be going home or you're just not seen as the type of player that would be worthy of the $1 million. So from the jump, we see just Jake getting really frustrated and placing a lot of blame on Katura for the D vote. He and Katura had agreed that they were going to vote for D. Yeah, so we see these scenes where Jake gets so frustrated and he starts to place blame on anyone around him. I mean, mostly Katura in these scenes. You know, um, After they get back from tribal, Jake just lays it all out. Katura, this is what you're supposed to do. You made me swear on my Nana. And he's doing this all in front of everyone who's there. So obviously Dee and Austin are also there. It doesn't come across in a good light, honestly, for him. I mean, I think there's typically a lot of decorum on the show where you're holding back a lot, or you might just take somebody off to the side or wait till a private moment to just say, hey, what was up with that? Um, and at least think through things. And you can just tell that Jake is being super reactive. Again, I think this is something that we can all relate to is, if you're hangry or you're just at wit's end or you just haven't really been able to, process your emotions or release them, or you're just overwhelmed, it can be really hard to keep your cool and not be reactive. Um, I think, especially on Survivor, where, they're hungry, they're tired, they're being asked to do things that even on the best day in their day-to-day life would be really challenging for them. Expecting to kind of put forth this persona that's, calm and pleasant and willing to work with other people. And Jake has just kind of lost it at this point. Um, I'm sure in watching this back, he wishes he had done some things differently there, like maybe not have been more reactionary or maybe had thought through it a little bit more. I mean, the reason Katura shares back with him that she didn't follow through on the plan is she just wasn't given enough information to actually trust he was going to do what he was going to do. And she wanted to save her game and she wanted to save her place in it. And that's why she ultimately voted for Julie instead of Dee. I'm sure after seeing that Dee won it all, she was wishing she had stuck with her vote, but she wasn't given enough, she said, from Jake in order to go through with this. So she was taking responsibility for her side of things, but Jake really wasn't. He was looking for somebody to blame because he felt so terrible. And I mean, when we're in that state, I mean, one of the very best things that we can do is just take a pause, take a beat, and take a walk or something. Like, if Jake had just even taken a moment to walk down the beach, excused himself for a moment, just to check in, just to see where he was at and just kind of consider the big picture. Like, what is the impact of me unleashing on Couture right now? I wonder if he would have changed his course of action. But often when we're in those and, we're flying hot, it's really hard to take those moments to pause and check in and do that. I mean, I myself am very guilty of this from time to time. It seems like in the moment, like the most satisfying thing for that short term gratification is to blame someone else or unleash on somebody else because it does, I mean, frankly, it does release some emotion, but the long-term impact of that is, that you are potentially hurting the other people there, or in the case of Jake in the game, Couture is not going to trust him moving forward unless she absolutely has to, like unless he's the last person in the game. Uh, and it's damaging to that relationship. I think if this had happened earlier in the season, he for sure would have been voted out because he's not somebody that's seen as trustworthy or steady, to be honest, steady on his feet, steady with his emotions. So, anyway, we see this theme throughout the episode. That is really interesting with that first immunity challenge, the one that Austin won. Jake was right behind him. And the reason that he didn't win is because there was a puzzle piece that was right in front of him, but he didn't see. It was kind of like tucked off to the side. Um, and from whatever state that Jake was in, he didn't see this puzzle piece, and that's why he didn't win. And Jeff points this out. He says, "Hey, Jake, you missed a puzzle piece." I thought it was really interesting that Jeff brought this up because, it does point out that Jake is missing things. Jake isn't on his game. But it's potential, maybe Jeff was thinking he was helping Jake out by pointing out, like, hey, you're missing things. Take a beat. Think about what you're doing. You're missing things. You're ruining your game, bro. Um, I mean, it just speaks again to where Jake is at in the game. You can see that other people are in the same circumstances as him, but dealing with their environment in a very, very different way. I will say, to Jake's credit, he doesn't give up. Like, even though he expresses emotions, he stomps over things, he blames people, he's really hard on himself. He doesn't like leave the game. He doesn't quit like other people have this season. He does stay with it. So there is some part of him that sees that it is worth it to stay, even if he feels so terrible and even if he kind of feels like everything is against him. Um, I do think that his crowning moment of this whole episode, and for him, probably, he expresses in his life, is that he does ask to make fire and he does succeed. And you can tell he's super proud of himself in those moments. One thing I really liked about what Jake had to say is, they have this moment where he does succeed and he does make fire and he does get to the final three. And, Jeff is asking him, like, what is this like for you? And he's just like, I just wish I could go back. I wish I could do Jake's accent, but he's like, I wish I could go back and tell 15-year-old Jake, hey, like, look at what we did here. Like, look at what we can accomplish. You made it, buddy. I love that moment because I think about, I think there's for all of us like that, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old version of ourselves inside that, from time to time, we just really want to make that part of us super proud. Um, and it is a little bit disappointing sometimes when you ask yourself that question, like, what would my 11-year-old self think about this? What I'm doing in life right now. And if the answer isn't positive, it can be kind of a bummer. And so for a 15-year-old Jake, you would have been super proud of him. Like, hey, you don't end up this fat kid who, you know, whatever trajectory maybe he thought he was going to be on when he was 15, like you really do make it, buddy. It was a cool moment. It was filled with emotion. And, I'm glad that they showed it on this episode because it was kind of one of those moments that probably made all of those moments of frustration and moments he wished he could have switched, like, worth it to have that experience in his life. I was actually kind of like thinking about this for myself, like, oh, what would my, 12-year-old self think of my life right now? And, it was like fun to think about because I think she'd think it was pretty rad that I was, that I'm traveling around, that I, this year started my own business, that we're living off solar power. Then I'm starting to play music, and I think she'd be super, super proud of everything that all the decisions I've made up to this point. Maybe a few that she wishes I would have done differently, but overall, the sum total of it is quite proud. So it's pretty cool we can have those moments. I mean, that's something that you could ask yourself right now too. It's like, what would that 15-year-old version of me think about all this? What would that 12-year-old version, whatever age calls to you, you could go with that. Um, so yeah, I mean, Jake doesn't get any votes at the end, but I don't think he necessarily expected it at that point, sitting next to Dee and Austin, who arguably played some of the best games I have seen in a super long time. But I think just making it to that third place, making it through the end and everything that he went through was satisfying for him. I'd be curious to read interviews now with him, just, now that the show is complete, but who knows? Let's see what else in this. Well, I mean, obviously, I have to talk about Dee. One of the things that I have loved about Dee throughout is this like belief in herself. Like, you can't win Survivor and play small and not have some like a great amount of belief in yourself that you can actually do it. What it takes to be out there and to make the decisions that they're making on a regular basis, taking the risks that they are, requires you to draw on these parts of yourselves that, it's like confidence you didn't know that you had, risk taking abilities you didn't know you had. And I love how Dee just like owns it. She has spoken that you know, she just kind of knew at the end, like, yeah, I kind of thought going into this, I was going to get it. Like, she's was able to evaluate her game and everything that she had done up to that point. She's like, yeah, this is mine. The other thing I think is pretty, I don't know, I think inspirational is not the word I want to go for here, but I think something just to bear in mind is like a lot of Dee's game was that, she was playing for herself and she wanted to impress herself, but she really had this like very purposeful why for the game. She wanted to like win the money and retire her parents. And be able to give back to her parents in the way that they had been giving to her. And so a lot of she won 3 immunity challenges. She comes back and said, I just thought of my family the whole time. I thought of my family. And I think this is something that I've seen come up in coaching a lot throughout the years is, you know, having conversations with people and even, with myself, it's like, it's really easy when you're doing something scary to get into your own head and to second guess yourself and to doubt yourself and to think of all the reasons why you can't do something. And I wouldn't call it necessarily like a hack, but a shift that I see is helpful for most people is if you can switch it around and think about the impact of what you're doing on other people. How that can somehow ease the tension that you have for yourself. So one of the things that came up a lot, back in the day when I was just first starting coaching is, just imagine that there are like 100 people in a room that desperately need your help and they're just waiting for you to walk through the door. How do you show up? And it was suddenly just like, oh, well, wow, they really, want my help. They really need my help. It was like a way of shifting things to stop thinking about yourself so much and instead thinking about the other people who just need you to show up and be yourself. And I think that's kind of it for Dee is just sort of like if it had just maybe been for her, oh, this would be kind of a cool thing to do. Yay, the money would be great. I don't know if she would have played the same way she did if she wasn't like eyes on the prize. I am doing this for my family. And, also because, I'm doing it for myself. Like this thing I want to achieve. I've been thinking about it for a while. She has spoken about all the work that she did going into it to be mentally, physically, emotionally prepared to be in the game, to play in a certain way that, her natural inclinations out in the quote unquote real world, she was able to set those to the side. So, she's spoken about, she doesn't lie to people in her real life. She's not as direct as she was in the game. Um, that kind of thing. Being able to put her showmance with Austin to the side to continue to make choices that would help her get to the end, knowing what an impact that could have had on her relationship with Austin. So there's just a lot of elements there that I thought were really cool to see playing out, because it's just like I said, I've seen it playing out in coaching relationships that I've had throughout the years. Is when you can take the focus off yourself and think about the bigger picture, that can be the thing that is needed in order to move forward and not be in your head so much. Let's see what else from this episode. I mean, there's so much in here. I mean, I think a lot of this has been talked about in the previous episodes of, reality show life coach of this season, of just really the amount of belief that goes into things. I mean, Katura, it was amazing to watch her in this episode, in the last several episodes, watching her story unfold. And, to the very last fire making challenge, her belief in herself, it would have been very easy for her to be just like, I don't know how to make fire, or I've only done this a little bit, but it was just like, you can do it. You can do it. You can see that, like, it's the way that she's talking to herself that helps her continue to show up. Same for Julie. Same for all of the players there at the end. So, yeah, I mean, I think in some, like, I'm super happy for Dee that she won. I think she is a worthy winner. I think, I think back to previous seasons, and I would say the last several seasons, I've been really happy with who's risen to the top. I think, obviously the jury picking who the winner is, I think they are invested in a certain way that they're evaluating things um, from all angles, their own experience of the game, but also, thinking through from, for a lot of them, a very almost evaluative standpoint of like who's worthy of this $1 million. And so it was great to see Dee win. Um, let's see what else from this episode. I mean, I thought a really cool moment was all the lawyers being revealed as liars. Even Jake said he lied. It was really funny when they're all having pizza and champagne at the end. And Jake's just like, yeah, I don't practice law in the way I said I did. And of course, Katura reveals that she is a lawyer, and Julie as well. And I think there's a lot of fun shock when that came out. And I think was interesting too with Katura, how many people were like, Katura, you need to go to law school. So even though she didn't reveal to them that, she's an attorney, they can see that side of her. Like, I think, sometimes when we're doing the things we're meant to be doing, you can't help but show up in a way that makes people think like, yeah, I can see it there. I can see it there. So all in all, great season. It's been so fun to watch, and it has been really interesting to cover it on this podcast. We've done a couple different shows now. We started with The Bachelorette over the summer, talking about the dating world, very different than talking about Survivor world. So it's been fun to have that contrast of conversations. So this wraps it for this last season of reality show life coach for Survivor. To be honest, I don't know what's next, but I have a whole week off to think about what is next for the show. So might be back in a couple of weeks, or it might be another plan. I'll give an update on, the podcast as to what direction things will be going in. If you have any ideas for the show, feel free to reach out to me, Lynn at lynngrogan.com, or message me on Instagram. I'm at Lynn Grogan on Instagram. DM me, comment on things, and let me know what you think. It's so fun to talk about TV shows in this way and to break it down in a different perspective for coaching. So anyway, happy 2023. We're about to wrap up this year, and I will talk to you in the new year. Take care. Bye. Thanks for listening.